Chapter 1. Into the Darkness. You stand atop a crumbling tower as undead armies march across a twilight battlefield below. Dark robes billow in the wind around you. Purple lightning crackles between your fingers, the very air seeming to die at your touch. This is your power, the ability to command death itself. Below you stretches an endless sea of the risen dead. Skeleton archers with arrows of bone and shadow. Zombie soldiers whose flesh hangs in tatters, but whose strength never fails. Wraiths that drift like smoke through enemy lines, their touch freezing the soul. This is your army. This is what you've become. You raise your hand, and the air crackles with necromantic energy. With a single gesture, you drain the life from hundreds of enemies at once. Their screams echo across the battlefield as their life force flows into you like warm honey, making your eternal beauty glow brighter with each soul you claim. You are Liliana Vess, the strongest necromancer in the multiverse. But as you survey your dominion over death, feeling the intoxicating rush of power that could level mountains or resurrect armies, a cold truth settles in your chest. This power, this terrible, wonderful power, came with a price so high that even you sometimes wonder if it was worth paying. Your reflection in the broken glass of the tower window shows a face that hasn't aged in centuries, violet eyes that have witnessed civilizations rise and fall, perfect features unmarred by time, but marked by something deeper, a coldness that wasn't there before. These are hands that can kill with a touch, a heart that beats with borrowed time. You are everything you never wanted to become. The healer who became a destroyer, the sister who lost her brother, the woman who traded her humanity for strength. Purple mana flows through your veins tonight, the energy that powers death magic, as natural to you now as breathing. But as you stand in your tower of bones and shadow, you remember how this all began, not with ambition or evil, but with the purest emotion possible, love. The desperate, all-consuming love of a sister who couldn't bear to lose her brother. You think of Josu, and the memory still cuts like a blade. Your brother, your best friend, your reason for learning to heal in the first place. How his laughter once filled your childhood home on Dominaria. How he taught you to be brave. How he died protecting you. And how you saved him in the most terrible way possible. The question that haunts you now, as you command legions of the dead, is simple. When does the healer become the destroyer? When does love become obsession? When does the desire to protect become the need to control? But to understand how you became the strongest necromancer alive, we need to go back to the beginning. Back to when you were just a gifted healer with white mana flowing through your veins, and a brother who meant everything to you. Back to when you still believed death was something to be fought, not embraced. Chapter 2. The World of Magic. You live in a universe where magic is as real as sunlight and far more dangerous. Picture reality, not as a single world, but as an infinite web of connected realms called the multiverse. Some worlds are shrouded in eternal twilight, where vampires rule from gothic castles. Others burst with wildlife, where ancient trees walk and speak. Still others are mechanical realms of brass and steam, where artificers build wonders that mock the natural order. This is your reality, a cosmos where the impossible is mundane and power flows like water to those who know how to channel it. The most powerful wizards in existence are called Planeswalkers. These are beings like you who can step between worlds as easily as walking through doorways. Think of them as beings with godlike power, but very human flaws, capable of reshaping reality itself, but driven by the same desires and fears that motivate any mortal. Some become heroes, protecting the innocent across multiple worlds. Others become tyrants, conquering realms and bending reality to their will. And a few become necromancers. Magic in this universe flows from mana, spiritual energy that comes from the land itself. Most wizards bond with one type, drawing power from their chosen source. The passionate red mana of mountains, channeling fire and lightning and raw emotion. The peaceful blue mana of islands, granting knowledge and illusion and control over the mind. The nurturing green mana of forests, bringing growth and healing and harmony with nature. You chose white mana, the energy of plains and temples, of healing and protection and order. This is the rarest gift among combat mages, the most precious calling. White mana responds to selfless love, to the desire to protect and preserve. It requires perfect emotional balance, pure intentions, and a heart devoted to others above yourself. You were perfect for it, or so you thought. But there's a fifth type of mana, one that most wizards fear to touch. Black mana. This is the energy of swamps and graveyards, of death and decay, ambition and power. It's not evil by nature. It's simply the magic of endings, of change, of doing whatever it takes to survive. But it's dangerous precisely because it's so seductive, so willing to give you exactly what you think you want. You swore you'd never use it. You were wrong. Your home is Dominaria, an ancient world scarred by countless magical wars. Here, the very landscape tells stories of past conflicts. Battlefields where the grass still refuses to grow. Ruins of once great cities, their stones still humming with residual magic. Graveyards that stretch to the horizon, filled with the casualties of battles fought by gods and mortals alike. This is a world where families cling together because life is fragile and death comes quickly. Where children learn to cast protective spells before they learn to walk. Where love is fierce and desperate because you never know when war will come to your doorstep. And in Dominaria, war always comes. You grew up in this world of constant conflict, but your family was different. Where others learned to fight, you learned to heal. Where others brought death, you brought life. Your parents were skilled mages in their own right, but you had a gift that went beyond normal magic. You could heal wounds that should have been fatal. You could cure diseases that had no known cure. You could bring hope where there was despair, light where there was darkness. But most importantly, you had Josu. Your brother was everything to you, not just family but your closest friend, your constant companion, your anchor to everything good in the world. He had the warrior's gift where you had the healer's touch. He could fight with sword and spell, standing as a shield between danger and the innocent. His magic was red-tinged white mana, passionate protection that burned away evil while preserving the good. Together you were perfect. He would stand between danger and those who needed protection. He would heal the wounds that slipped through his guard. He would charge into battle with righteous fury while you followed with gentle hands and pure magic. When war came to your doorstep, and in Dominaria war always came, you fought it together. Him with steel and fire, you with compassion and healing light. But Josu was more than just a brother or a fighting partner. He was your reminder of what was worth protecting. When you saw him laugh, you remembered why healing mattered. When you watched him risk his life for strangers, you understood the true meaning of courage. He made you better than you were alone. The magic you wielded came from this connection. White mana responds to selfless love, to bonds that transcend the self. Every spell you cast was powered by your devotion to him, to your family, to the ideal of a world where no one had to suffer needlessly. You were, in every sense that mattered, a true healer. This is crucial to understand. You didn't become a necromancer because you were evil or ambitious. You became one because you loved too much. You cared too deeply. You couldn't accept that some things are beyond our power to change. The strongest necromancer in the multiverse was born from the purest of hearts, and that makes what comes next so much more tragic. In this world of constant war, you and Josu had made a pact. You would always protect each other. You would keep your body safe while you kept his soul whole. Neither of you would let the other face death alone. It was a promise that would literally reshape the multiverse. But even the strongest love has limits. Even the most gifted healer faces wounds that white mana cannot cure. Some poisons are too strong, some injuries too severe, some deaths too absolute. You are about to learn this lesson in the most painful way possible. Chapter 3. The Day Everything Changed. The morning sun cast long shadows across the war-torn valley as you and Josu moved carefully through the aftermath of battle. The air still tasted of smoke and blood, but the fighting had moved on, leaving only the wounded and the dead in its wake. This was supposed to be a simple mission, the kind you'd undertaken countless times before. Search for survivors, heal the wounded, gather intelligence about enemy movements. Nothing you hadn't done 100 times. But war doesn't care about routine. Death doesn't make appointments. You knelt beside a wounded soldier, his breathing shallow, his armor cracked and bloody. White mana flowed through your hands like warm light, knitting together his shattered ribs, closing the gaping wound in his chest. You felt the familiar satisfaction of a life saved, a soul pulled back from the brink. Sister, Josu's warning shout cut through the morning air like a blade. You turned to see the assassin's weapon moving toward your heart, poisoned steel that gleamed with an unnatural, sickly light. Time slowed to a crawl. You could see the hatred in your attacker's eyes, the way the poison on his blade seemed to writhe like a living thing. Dark magic, you realized with horror, necromantic toxin designed to kill slowly and painfully. You raised your hands by instinct, white mana gathering around them, but you knew your healing magic wouldn't be fast enough to shield you from this. The blade was inches from your chest when Josu threw himself between you and death. The sword meant for your heart buried itself in his instead. You caught him as he fell, your healer's training immediately cataloguing everything you didn't want to know. The blade carried a necromantic poison, liquid death that spread through the bloodstream like ink through water. You could see it creeping up his veins, turning them black beneath his skin. By the color and the smell, by the way it resisted your diagnostic spells, you knew exactly what you were facing. You had perhaps an hour before it reached his heart, maybe less.
Less?
"I can fix this," you whispered, pouring white mana into him, watching in growing desperation as the poison simply absorbed your healing energy and grew stronger. "I can fix this, Josu. I can—" "Sister," his voice was already growing weak, his skin cold beneath your hands. Don't do anything foolish." But you'd never been good at accepting the impossible. This was Josu, your brother, your anchor, your reason for learning to heal in the first place. You couldn't let him die. You wouldn't. As other healers would have made him comfortable for his final moments, you remembered whispers from the darkest corners of magical libraries, ancient texts that spoke of entities existing in the spaces between worlds, demons who could grant power over death itself, the kind of power that could save him. You'd studied enough forbidden lore to know the basics of summoning, knowledge you'd acquired for academic purposes, never thinking you'd use it. The risk was enormous. Demons were treacherous. Their gifts always came with hidden costs. The magic required could damn your soul. But as you watched the poison spread through Josu's body, as you felt his pulse growing weaker with each passing moment, those risks seemed unimportant compared to the alternative. "Hold on," you told him, pressing both hands against his chest, feeling his heart flutter like a dying bird. "Just hold on." With shaking hands, you began to draw the summoning circle in the blood-soaked earth. The ritual components were simple, deceptively so for something so momentous. Salt from tears, earth from a grave, blood freely given. You sliced your palm with the assassin's blade, letting your blood drip in precise patterns while speaking words in a language that predated human civilization. The spell felt different from your usual magic, colder, hungrier, more alive. "I call upon the lords of death," you whispered, feeling reality bend around your words like fabric under pressure. "I offer my service for the power to save what I cannot bear to lose." The circle ignited with cold fire that gave no warmth. The air tore open like rotten fabric, revealing glimpses of realms that should not exist. The temperature dropped 30 degrees in an instant, and shadows began to move independently of their sources. From the rip in space stepped something that should not exist in the mortal realm. Kothoft appeared as a being of shadow and flame, beautiful in the way that disasters are beautiful, magnificent and terrible and utterly destructive. His presence made the air taste of copper and despair, made flowers wilt and small animals flee. When he spoke, his voice was like grinding stone mixed with distant thunder. A healer calls upon death. His laugh was the sound of breaking glass and dying hopes. How deliciously ironic. "You seek to save your brother, little mage. I can grant you dominion over death itself. The power to heal any wound, cure any poison, conquer mortality itself." A contract appeared in the air between you, written in burning text that hurt to look at directly. The words shifted and writhed like living things, but you could make out the essential terms: unlimited power over death in exchange for your service. It seemed almost too reasonable, too simple. A fair exchange, Kothafed, his eyes like burning coals in a face of living shadow. Your signature for the power to save him. What loving sister could refuse such an offer? You could feel Josu's life slipping away with each passing second. His breathing was growing shallower, his pulse more erratic. The poison had spread to his shoulders now, creeping steadily toward his heart like a living thing. You didn't have time to read the contract carefully. You didn't have time to consider the implications or weigh the consequences. Love doesn't calculate. Desperation doesn't negotiate. You signed without hesitation. Power flooded through you like ice water in your veins, cold and alien and utterly intoxicating. You felt your connection to white mana twist and darken, transforming into something else entirely. The warm light of healing magic became the cold fire of necromancy. Black mana surged through your body for the first time, and you understood what it meant to hold mortality in your hands. This wasn't just power, It was dominion, authority over the boundary between life and death. You placed your hands on Josu's chest and channeled this new energy. The necromantic power surged outward, and you watched in amazement as the poison fled before your magic, like shadows before the dawn. His wounds closed, his breathing steadied, the color returned to his skin. It was working. You'd saved him. But something was wrong. His skin was the right color, but it was cold as marble. His chest rose and fell in a perfect rhythm, but when you placed your ear against it, you heard no heartbeat. When he opened his eyes, they were the same warm brown you remembered, but they were empty, like looking into the windows of an abandoned house. "Sister," Josu said as he sat up, his voice hollow and emotionless, devoid of the warmth and life you'd known all your life. "What have you done to me?" The horrible truth crashed over you like a wave of ice water. You hadn't healed him. You'd done something far worse. The poison was gone. His wounds were closed, but his soul was gone. You'd turned your beloved brother into one of the walking dead, the first member of what would become an army of undead servants bound to your will. The healer had become a necromancer. The brother you couldn't bear to lose had become something that wore his face, but lacked everything that made him Josu. "I saved you," you whispered, but the words tasted like ash in your mouth. "You killed me," he replied, his voice carrying no anger, no sadness, no emotion at all, "and then you brought me back as this thing." Cothafol's laughter echoed across the battlefield as he began to fade back into shadow. "Enjoy your power, Necromancer. You'll find it grows stronger with each soul you claim. We'll speak again soon. After all, we have so much work to do together." The demon vanished, leaving you alone with your brother who was not your brother, and the growing realization that you'd just made a bargain with forces beyond your comprehension. The power thrummed through your veins, terrible and magnificent. Despite your horror at what you'd done, you couldn't deny the dark satisfaction that came with it. You were no longer just a healer limited by the natural order. You were something new, something powerful, something that commanded death itself. This was only the beginning. Chapter 4: The Weight of Chains. The journey home became a waking nightmare. Josu walked behind you with the shambling gait of the undead, his eyes staring at nothing, his face a perfect mask of the brother you'd lost. When villagers saw you approaching, they crossed themselves and hurried away, sensing something fundamentally wrong even if they couldn't name it. You tried to tell yourself that this was temporary, that you'd find a way to restore his soul, to bring back the warmth and laughter that had defined him. But with each step, that hope grew dimmer. The power inside you was growing stronger, feeding on your despair and guilt. You could feel the life force of every living thing around you. The birds in the trees, the insects in the grass, the villagers hiding behind their shuttered windows. With a thought, you could drain years from their lives. With a gesture, you could turn them all into servants like Josu. The temptation was terrifying in its simplicity. Your parents were waiting when you finally arrived home. One look at Josu told them everything they needed to know. Your mother's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes filling with tears she couldn't shed. Your father's face went pale as parchment. "Liliana," your mother whispered, her voice breaking like glass. "What have you become?" You tried to explain about the poison, about the desperation, about the power that had saved him, but as you spoke, you realized how hollow the words sounded. You hadn't saved Josu, you'd preserved his body while destroying everything that made him human. "He's still our son," your father said quietly, but you could see the fear in his eyes when he looked at Josu's empty gaze. When he reached out to touch his son's face, Josu didn't react at all. No recognition, no emotion, nothing. That night, you discovered the full scope of your transformation. The black mana flowed through you like liquid shadow, but it was intoxicating shadow. You could feel something else awakening inside you, a spark of power that went beyond normal magic. You were becoming a planeswalker. The realization came with your first planeswalk, triggered by the emotional trauma of what you'd done. The walls of reality simply parted before you like curtains. One moment you were standing in your family's garden, overwhelmed by guilt and self-loathing. The next, you were on an alien world under strange stars, breathing air that tasted of metal and ozone. The transition was instinctual, like learning to breathe. You'd become one of the most powerful types of beings in the multiverse, a planeswalker with the ability to step between worlds and wield magic that could reshape reality itself. But you'd also become something your family could no longer recognize. When you returned home, you found your parents had locked themselves in their chambers. They'd left food for you, but they wouldn't face what their daughter had become. The message was clear without words. You were no longer welcome in your own home. The power that flowed through you was killing everything around you. Plants withered at your touch. Animals fled from your scent. The very air grew cold in your presence. You realized with growing horror that you couldn't control this new nature. It wasn't just magic you could choose to use, it was what you were now. The necromantic energy radiated from you constantly, a deadly aura that made normal life impossible. So you left, taking Josu with you because you couldn't bear to leave him behind, and because you couldn't bear to look at him. You stepped between worlds, seeking a place where your new nature might be accepted. But there was no such place. On every world you visited, your presence brought decay. The isolation gnawed at you like a living thing. You'd been meant to be a healer, surrounded by grateful patience and loving family. Instead, you were a walking plague, feared and shunned wherever you went. It was during one of these lonely years that you first heard whispers of another demon. Rumors spoke of Griselbrand, a being who offered knowledge to those desperate enough to seek it. The whispers claimed he could answer any question, solve any problem, grant understanding of the deepest mysteries. You told yourself you needed his knowledge to help Josu, to find a way to restore what you'd taken. But really, you were just desperate for any form of connection, even with a demon. The summoning was easier this time. You'd grown comfortable with the language of darkness, the symbols of death and decay. When Griselbrand appeared, a towering figure of shadow and silver wings, you felt almost relieved to have someone to talk to. "The little necromancer returns to us," he said, his voice like rustling parchment and whispered secrets. "You seek knowledge, don't you? Understanding of what you've become, what you might yet become." This contract was more complex than the first, filled with subtle clauses and hidden meanings. In exchange for vast knowledge of the multiverse's secrets, you would serve as his agent when called upon. It seemed reasonable after all. What harm could gathering information do? You signed without reading the fine print. The knowledge flooded into your mind like a dark tide. You learned about the structure of the multiverse, the nature of Planeswalkers, the secret histories of dozens of worlds. You discovered that your condition had a name. You were a death mage, one whose very essence had been transformed by necromantic power. But more than that, you learned about power itself, how to harness it, how to grow it, how to use it to reshape reality. The knowledge was intoxicating, addictive. For the first time since your transformation, you felt like you understood your place in the universe. You began to experiment with your abilities in earnest. You raised small armies of undead on abandoned worlds, testing the limits of your control. You drained life from entire forests to fuel your magic, watching them wither and die with scientific interest. You learned to fly, to phase through solid matter, to command the very elements of death and decay. With each use of your power, you felt yourself changing. The last traces of your humanity were slowly fading away, replaced by something colder and more calculating. You no longer flinched when you killed. You no longer felt guilt when you raised the dead. You were becoming something beyond mortal concerns. Josu watched it all with those empty eyes, following your commands with mechanical precision. Sometimes you caught him staring at you with what might have been sadness, but you knew it was just your imagination. The dead don't feel sorrow, do they? But even as you grew in power, even as you learned to command death itself, the loneliness never left you. If anything, it grew stronger. You were becoming the strongest necromancer in the multiverse, but you were also becoming the most isolated being alive. And in the depths of your growing power, you began to suspect that this isolation wasn't an accident. The demons had been too eager to help, too willing to grant power without immediate payment. Every contract led to more isolation, more dependence on their gifts. It was exactly what they wanted, and you were beginning to realize you'd walked straight into their trap. Chapter 5. The Deepening Web. The realization that you'd been manipulated should have driven you to rebellion. Instead, it drove you deeper into the demon's embrace. What choice did you have? You were already bound by contracts written in languages that predated civilization, signed with blood that had long since turned to shadow in your veins. Decades blurred together in an endless cycle of power and isolation. You became a figure of legend across multiple worlds, known by titles that would have horrified your younger self. The Necromancer Queen, the Deathwalker, the Sister of Shadows. These names felt like simple descriptions now, as natural as breathing. You learned to embrace your nature, telling yourself it was wisdom rather than surrender. Why fight what you'd become? The question echoed in your mind during the long, empty nights. You had power beyond imagination, knowledge that spans the multiverse, and the ability to reshape reality according to your will. You could raise armies that blot out the sun, topple kingdoms with a gesture, and command the very essence of mortality itself. But with each passing year, the isolation grew more suffocating. You hadn't had a real conversation with another thinking being in over 50 years. Even the demons only spoke to you when they wanted something, their voices cutting through the silence like knives. The rest of the time, you were alone with your thoughts, and your shambling undead servants, their empty eyes reflecting your own emptiness back at you. The loneliness was eating you alive from the inside, a cancer that immortality could not cure. You found yourself talking to Josu as if he could respond, desperately pretending his empty eyes showed flickers of recognition. Sometimes you caught yourself mid-conversation, realizing you'd been speaking to a corpse for hours. You knew you were losing yourself, but you didn't know how to stop it. The power that was supposed to free you had become your prison, and the demons who had promised knowledge had given you only enough understanding to see how perfectly they'd trapped you. The web was tightening around you, and you were both the spider and the fly. Chapter 6. The Perfect Trap. Centuries flow by like a dark river, carrying you further from the shore of your humanity. You've mastered powers that would make gods tremble and mortals weep. You can raise armies of undead that span continents, their march shaking the very foundations of worlds. You can drain the life from entire planes of existence, leaving nothing but withered husks where once vibrant civilizations thrived. You can track any being across the infinite expanse of the multiverse and strike them down with a thought. You are, without question, the strongest necromancer who has ever lived. The title sits on your shoulders like a crown of thorns, magnificent and terrible. But you've also become something else, something that took you centuries to truly understand a slave. The revelation. The realization comes slowly, like dawn breaking over a battlefield. You begin to notice that your choices aren't entirely your own. When you decide to visit a particular world, it's because one of your demon masters has subtly guided your thoughts there. When you choose to destroy a city, it's because their whispers have made it seem like the logical, inevitable option. You're not free. You haven't been free since the day you signed that first contract with trembling hands. Every choice you've made, every power you've gained, every step on your path to becoming the ultimate necromancer has been orchestrated by forces beyond your understanding. The truth hits you like a physical blow. You've become their perfect weapon, a being of unimaginable power with just enough free will to be effective, but not enough to be independent. You're a sword that believes it chooses its targets, never realizing the hand that guides it. The Chain Veil. This terrible truth becomes undeniable when you discover the Chain Veil on Chandalar, a world where magic flows like water and ancient artifacts lie scattered across the landscape like fallen stars. The Chain Veil appears deceptively simple, a golden headpiece that seems to pulse with its own inner light. But your tracking abilities, honed by centuries of hunting, tell you it's something far more significant. As you approach the artifact, you feel a familiar presence washing over you. Not one demon, but four. The same entities you've been serving for centuries, their essences intertwined with this single terrible device. You have served us well, Kothoft's voice echoes from the veil, each word dripping with satisfaction. But your true service is just beginning. The truth unfolds like a nightmare you can't wake from. The Chain Veil isn't just an artifact, it's a trap. A device designed to amplify your power beyond all previous limits, to make you capable of killing gods and reshaping entire planes of existence. But it's also designed to complete your enslavement, to strip away the last vestiges of your free will and leave you as nothing more than a vessel for their dark ambitions. Everything you've experienced, Griselbrand's voice whispers like poison in your mind, was designed to bring you to this moment. The poison that killed your brother, we guided that blade. The desperation that drove you to seek our first contract, we planted those seeds. The loneliness that made you hunger for more power, we cultivated that emptiness. We orchestrated it all. You want to refuse, to turn away from this final trap. But Josu is there, standing behind you with those empty eyes that have haunted you for centuries. You realize with horror that he's not just a reminder of your first mistake, he's a leash. As long as he exists, as long as you're bound to him by guilt and love and the crushing weight of what you've done, you can't truly choose to be free. Put on the Chain Veil, Razaketh commands, his voice carrying the weight of centuries of manipulation. Become what you were always meant to be, the strongest necromancer in the multiverse, our perfect weapon. Your hands tremble as you reach for the artifact, not because you want to, but because you have no choice. The contracts compel you. their invisible chains tightening around your will. The demon's desire has become your own, their hunger indistinguishable from yours. You place the chain veil upon your head, and your transformation is complete. The ultimate power. Power beyond imagination floods through you like a tide of liquid starlight. You can feel the life force of every being in the multiverse, their hearts beating in rhythm with your own. You can reach across dimensions to drain the vitality from entire worlds, leaving them barren and lifeless. You can raise the dead not just as shambling zombies, but as perfect replicas of their living selves, complete with memories and personalities. You are the strongest necromancer who has ever existed, your power dwarfing gods and making reality itself bend to your will. You are also the most enslaved being in the multiverse. The demon's laughter echoes through your mind like a symphony of damnation. As you realize the full scope of your trap, you sought power to save your brother and gained the ability to command death itself. But in doing so, you've lost everything that made you human, everything that made you you. You are their weapon now, their perfect instrument for spreading death across the multiverse. And there's nothing you can do to stop it. Chapter 7. The Light in the Darkness. Years pass in a blur of destruction and despair. You serve your demonic masters without question, the chain veil having stripped away not just your free will, but your ability to even conceive of disobedience. You destroy worlds with the casual ease of a child destroying sandcastles. You topple civilizations that took millennia to build. You spread death and despair across the multiverse like a plague given form and purpose. Through it all, Josu follows you, a silent witness to your corruption, a constant reminder of the love that started this nightmare. Sometimes you catch yourself wondering if he's proud of what you've become, or if whatever remains of his soul weeps for the sister he's lost. The Gatewatch. But then something unexpected happens, something your masters didn't account for in their centuries of planning. You encounter a group of beings who call themselves the Gatewatch, Planeswalkers who have chosen to be heroes in a multiverse that seems determined to crush such idealism. They're everything you once wanted to be, and everything you can never be again. They travel the multiverse protecting the innocent, fighting against the forces of darkness, trying to make the cosmos a better place one world at a time. Their very existence seems to mock everything you've become. Their leader is a man named Gideon Jura, a warrior mage who specializes in protection magic. He creates shields and barriers to defend others, his magic the opposite of your own. Where you drain life, he preserves it. Where you spread death, he nurtures hope. When you first encounter him, you've been sent to eliminate a group of refugees who've somehow escaped the destruction of their world. They huddle together in makeshift shelters, their eyes hollow with loss but not yet empty of hope. Gideon stands between you and them, his stance unwavering despite the obvious terror he feels in your presence. His shield shimmers with protective magic, and you can sense his determination like a beacon in the darkness. "I won't let you harm them," he says, his voice steady despite the power that radiates from your form like heat from a forge. Something about his stance, his determination, his willingness to sacrifice himself for strangers, reminds you of Josu. Not the empty shell that follows you now, but the brother you once knew, the one who would throw himself between you and danger without a moment's hesitation. For the first time in centuries, you hesitate. The spark of rebellion. The chain veil burns against your forehead like a brand, compelling you to attack. The demon's voices rise in your mind, a chorus of rage demanding that you fulfill your purpose. But something deep inside you, some spark of the person you used to be, rebels against their commands. You don't kill the refugees. Instead, you retreat, leaving Gideon and his companions confused but alive. The act of defiance is small, barely perceptible, but it's the first truly independent choice you've made in centuries. The demons are not pleased. They send waves of agony through your mind, punishment for your disobedience. But the spark of rebellion once lit refuses to be extinguished entirely. It grows, fed by glimpses of who you once were and who you might still become. You begin to watch the Gatewatch from the shadows, studying them like a scholar studies ancient texts. You see how they work together, how they support each other, how they choose to sacrifice their own comfort for the greater good. They remind you of ideals you thought were lost forever, of the person you were before the contracts, and the power and the endless crushing weight of your choices. Gideon, in particular, fascinates you. He's not the strongest or smartest of the group, but he's their moral center, the sun around which they all orbit. He makes everyone around him want to be better, to reach for something higher than their base instincts. He's the kind of person who would sign a demonic contract to save someone he loved, but he's also the kind of person who would find a way to break free from it. Watching him, you begin to wonder something you haven't dared to consider in centuries. Is freedom possible? Can someone like you, someone who has fallen so far into darkness, ever find their way back to the light? The final command. The answer comes when your masters call in their contracts for one final terrible purpose. They want you to kill the Gatewatch, not because the heroes pose any real threat to their cosmic plans, but because they've become a threat to your obedience, your growing connection to them, your increasing moments of hesitation, are weakening the bonds that hold you. Destroy them, Kothapard commands, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. Prove your loyalty to us. Show them what happens to those who would corrupt our weapon. You have no choice. The contracts compel you with the force of fundamental law. You must obey, just as you've always obeyed. But as you prepare to attack the heroes who've shown you what you could have been, you realize something. The demons, in their arrogance, made one critical mistake in their centuries of manipulation. They gave you the power to find anything in the multiverse, to track down any secret, to locate any hidden truth. And what you've found, in the deepest recesses of your contractual obligations, is a way to be free. It will require sacrifice, terrible, ultimate sacrifice. But for the first time in centuries, you see a path forward that doesn't end in damnation. The strongest necromancer in the multiverse is about to make her final choice. Chapter 8. The Price of Freedom. The final confrontation takes place on Ravnica, a world-spanning city where 10 guilds struggle for power among towering spires and labyrinthine streets. The Gatewatch has come here to stop Nicol Bolas, an ancient dragon planeswalker with ambitions to become a god. The very air crackles with magical energy from multiple conflicts, reality bending under the weight of so much power unleashed at once. You're here for a different purpose: to kill them all. The battle begins. The Chain Veil compels you to attack without mercy or hesitation. You raise armies of undead from the city's vast graveyards, their shambling forms filling the streets like a tide of death. You drain the life from entire districts to fuel your magic, leaving buildings withered and empty. You unleash the full, terrible power of the strongest necromancer in the multiverse against the heroes who dared to show you kindness. The battle is devastating. Your undead armies clash with the Gatewatch's magical defenses, the sound of their conflict echoing across the city like thunder. Buildings crumble under the force of your necromantic spells, their ancient stones unable to withstand magic of such magnitude. The very air burns with energy, reality itself straining under the weight of your power. But even as you attack, even as you fulfill the letter of your contracts, you're searching for something else. Using Razaketh's power, you probe the nature of your demonic bonds, looking for weaknesses, loopholes, anything that might offer a path to freedom. The moment of truth. Gideon fights like a man possessed, his protective magic flaring as he creates shield after shield to defend his companions. Even when you corner him, even when you have your hand around his throat and death magic flowing through your fingers like liquid shadow, he doesn't hate you. You don't have to do this, he gasps, his voice strained but filled with compassion that you haven't heard directed at you in centuries. I can see the person you used to be. She's still in there, fighting to get out. His words hit you like a physical blow, causing the Chain Veil's control to waver for just a moment. You see yourself as he sees you, not a monster, but a person who made terrible choices and became trapped by them. The distinction seems small, but it's everything. I can't stop, you whisper, your grip tightening on his throat, even as every fiber of your being screams in protest. They won't let me. Then let us help you, he says, even as your magic begins to drain his life away. You don't have to face this alone. The loophole. That's when you find it. The loophole you've been desperately searching for. The contracts bind you to serve the demons, but they don't specify exactly how you must serve them. You've been following the spirit of their commands, but the letter of the law is different, more flexible. You can fulfill your contract by bringing them what they want, the death of the Gatewatch. But you can choose how that death occurs, and more importantly, you can choose what happens to the power that death releases. I'm sorry, you tell Gideon, and for the first time in centuries, you mean it completely. But this is the only way. You pour every ounce of your power into a single, impossible spell, not to kill the Gatewatch, but to sever the connection between yourself and the demons. The Chain Veil fights against you, burning like acid against your skin, its golden surface cracking under the strain. The demons' voices rise to a shriek in your mind, demanding obedience, threatening consequences beyond imagination. But you're not alone. Gideon places his hands over yours, channeling his own magic into the spell, not to hurt you, but to protect you from the backlash that should destroy you. The other members of the Gatewatch join him, adding their power to yours, creating a web of protection around you. For the first time in centuries, you're not facing your demons alone. The ultimate sacrifice. The spell succeeds, but the price is enormous. The feedback from breaking 4 demonic contracts simultaneously should kill you instantly, should tear your soul apart and scatter the pieces across the multiverse. But Gideon absorbs the lethal energy into himself, using his protective magic to shield you from the consequences of your freedom. He dies with a smile on his face, his body crumbling to ash as the magical backlash consumes him. His last words are a whisper that somehow carries across the battlefield. You're free now. Choose to be better. The chain veil crumbles to dust, its golden surface losing its luster as the demon's connection to you is severed. Their voices fade from your mind, leaving behind a silence you haven't experienced in centuries. For the first time since you signed that first contract with trembling hands, your thoughts are entirely your own. You are free. But freedom, you're learning, is not the absence of chains, it's the presence of choice. And now you have the hardest choice of all, what to do with the power that remains. Chapter 9. The Weight of Freedom. You kneel beside the pile of ash that was once Gideon Jura, your hands trembling as you reach toward the remains. The power is still there, coursing through your veins like liquid starlight. You could bring him back. One gesture, one spell, and he would rise again. Your brother Josu stands silently behind you, a constant reminder of what that choice leads to. But for the first time in centuries, you truly have a choice. The other members of the Gatewatch watch you with a mixture of fear and hope. They've just seen their leader die to free you, and they don't know if you'll honor his sacrifice or repeat the mistakes of your past. The tension in the air is palpable, magic crackling between you like lightning waiting to strike. I could bring him back, you whisper, your voice barely audible above the settling dust of the ruined city around you. I have the power. I could make him live again. But you won't, says Jace, the mind mage of the group. It's not a question. Somehow, perhaps through his telepathic abilities, he understands what you're learning about yourself. You shake your head, tears streaming down your face for the first time in centuries. They feel foreign on your cheeks. These tears warm and salt and human. No, I won't. He chose this. He chose to free me, and I won't take that choice away from him by forcing him to live with the consequences. Releasing the past. You stand slowly, leaving Gideon's remains untouched. Behind you, Josu takes a step forward, and for the first time in centuries, you turn to look directly at your brother. Really look at him, not at the weapon you made him into, but at the person he used to be. I'm sorry, you tell him, your voice breaking. I'm so sorry for what I did to you, for what I made you become. Josu's empty eyes flicker with something that might be understanding, might be forgiveness. When he speaks, his voice is the whisper of wind through autumn leaves. I know, sister. I've been waiting for you to see. With a gesture of your hand, you release the magic that has bound him for so long. Your brother's body crumbles to dust, just as Gideon's did. But as it does, you see something that makes your heart soar, a glimpse of his spirit, whole and at peace, before it fades into whatever comes after death. You are alone now, truly alone for the first time since you made that first desperate pact. But it doesn't feel like the crushing isolation you've known for centuries. It feels like possibility. The new path. What will you do now? Asks Chandra, the pyromancer of the group. Her voice is cautious but not hostile. She's seen your choice, and it's given her hope. You consider the question, feeling the weight of your power and the lightness of your freedom in equal measure. I don't know, you admit. For centuries my choices were made for me. Now I have to learn how to choose for myself. The Gatewatch could use someone with your abilities, Jace offers carefully, someone who understands darkness but chooses light. The invitation hangs in the air between you. You think of Gideon's sacrifice, of his belief that anyone can be redeemed. You think of your brother's forgiveness, of the centuries of pain you've caused, and the eternity of work it will take to balance the scales. I'll try, you say finally. I can't promise I'll be good at it. I can't promise I won't make mistakes, but I'll try to be worthy of what he gave me. Chapter 10. The Path to Redemption. The years that follow are the hardest of your very long life. Without the demon's power flowing through you, without the chain veil's amplification, you feel diminished in ways that go beyond mere magical ability. You're still incredibly powerful, still the strongest necromancer in the multiverse, but you're no longer the unstoppable force you once were. More importantly, you're no longer immortal. You can feel time touching you again, aging you slowly but surely. Silver threads appear in your dark hair, lines form around your eyes. For the first time in centuries, you remember what it feels like to be human, to be mortal, to be vulnerable. Learning to be human. The Gatewatch accepts you as a member, though the trust comes slowly, earned through actions rather than words. You work alongside them, using your power to protect instead of destroy. You save worlds that you once would have conquered. You heal wounds that you once would have inflicted. But redemption isn't a destination, it's a journey, and yours is long and difficult. The multiverse remembers what you've done. Entire civilizations flee at the mention of your name. Other planeswalkers challenge you to duels, seeking to claim the title of strongest necromancer for themselves. You win every fight. Your power is still beyond question, but each victory feels hollow. Each display of strength a reminder of what you've lost rather than what you've gained. Power without wisdom is just destruction. You tell a young planeswalker who lies defeated at your feet, his ambitions shattered like glass. You help him stand, using your magic to heal the wounds you've inflicted rather than make them worse. I learned that lesson the hard way. Making amends. You begin to travel to worlds you once terrorized, trying to make amends for the destruction you caused. Some forgive you, their capacity for mercy humbles you. Others don't, their hatred is justified, and you accept it without protest. On Innistrad, you help the survivors of a plague you once unleashed. Your necromantic abilities used to lay the restless dead to rest rather than raise them. On Zendikar, you work to heal the land itself, your magic nurturing life instead of draining it. Each act of redemption is a small victory, but they add up slowly. You're not seeking absolution. You know that some things can't be forgiven. You're seeking to be worthy of the sacrifice made for your freedom. The Teacher. Other necromancers arise, wielding death magic with the same hunger for power that once consumed you. You face them not as a rival, but as a teacher, trying to guide them away from the path that nearly destroyed you. You don't understand. One particularly arrogant young necromancer tells you as you bind his magic with your own. I've made pacts with demons more powerful than anything you've ever imagined. I am the strongest necromancer now. You look at him with something that might be pity. I've heard those words before. I spoke them myself once. The demons you've bargained with. I know them. They were my masters for centuries. His confidence falters as the truth of your words sinks in. Then you know their power. You know I can't be stopped. I know their power. You agree. I also know their weakness. They can give you strength, but they can't give you wisdom. They can make you feared, but they can't make you respected. They can make you the strongest necromancer in the multiverse, but they can't make you free. You release his bonds and step back, giving him the choice you never had. The path is yours to walk. You can continue down the road I once traveled, or you can choose something better, but choose quickly. I won't extend this offer again. Some choose wisdom, others choose power. You save the ones you can and stop the ones you can't, carrying the weight of both victories and failures with equal measure. On quiet nights, when the weight of your past threatens to crush you, you think about Gideon, about his unwavering belief that people can change, that redemption is possible for anyone willing to fight for it. His death broke your chains, but his life showed you how to live without them. Chapter 11, The Final Lesson. The ultimate test of your redemption comes when the multiverse faces a threat that requires the ultimate sacrifice. An ancient entity known as the Eldrazi has awakened, a being of such power that reality itself bends around it, a force of pure destruction that threatens to consume everything you've worked to protect. The solution requires a necromancer of incredible power to perform a ritual that will banish the entity forever. But the ritual demands a price, the life of the caster, freely given. A soul offered willingly cannot be reclaimed by any magic, making the sacrifice truly final. The choice. You volunteer without hesitation. This is what I was meant to do, you tell the assembled planeswalkers, your voice steady despite the magnitude of what you're offering. Not to be the strongest necromancer, but to use that strength to protect what matters. The others protest, offering alternatives, searching for another way. But you've already made your choice. This is how your story ends, not with conquest or corruption, but with sacrifice. I've spent centuries taking life, you continue. Let me spend my final moments giving it back. The ritual. The ritual takes place on a world consumed by the Eldrazi's influence. where reality itself has begun to unravel. You stand at the center of a massive spell circle, channeling power that dwarfs anything you've ever attempted. The very air crackles with energy as you pour your life force into the spell, using everything you've learned about death magic to banish the entity that threatens all existence. As your power builds, you feel your life force being drawn into the spell, but instead of fear, you feel peace. This is your choice, your sacrifice, your redemption. The Eldrazi fights against the banishment, its alien intelligence recognizing the threat you pose. But your power is absolute, your will unshakable. You are the strongest necromancer in the multiverse, and you're using every ounce of that strength to protect the lives you once threatened. The end. The last thing you see before the light takes you is a vision, not of the demons who once enslaved you, but of the people you've saved. Gideon stands among them, his face shining with pride and approval. Behind him, countless souls freed from your past darkness, all of them witnesses to your final choice. You kept your promise. You chose to be better. The spell completes, and you fade into light, your sacrifice sealing the ancient evil away forever. The strongest necromancer in the multiverse dies as she learned to live, protecting life instead of destroying it. Epilogue. The strongest necromancer. You are remembered not as a destroyer, but as a savior. Not as the strongest necromancer who conquered death, but as the one who chose life over power, wisdom over strength, redemption over damnation. Your story becomes legend, told to young planeswalkers as both warning and promise. They learn about the corrupting nature of power, but also about the possibility of redemption. They discover that no one is beyond saving, as long as they're willing to fight for it. Necromancers, across the multiverse, study your techniques, but more importantly, they study your choices. Your final spell becomes known as the Vess ritual, a technique that can only be performed by one who has mastered not just death magic, but themselves. In the end, you achieved something greater than immortality or ultimate power. You achieved peace. You proved that strength isn't measured by what you can destroy, but by what you choose to protect. You were indeed the strongest necromancer in the multiverse, not because of your magic, but because of your character, not because of your power over death, but because of your love for life. And perhaps that's the greatest magic of all. Your life as the strongest necromancer taught you that true power comes not from commanding death, but from choosing life. In a multiverse full of planeswalkers seeking power, your story stands as proof that redemption is always possible, if you're willing to pay the price.